Madam Tasty. Madam Tasty, as she is fondly called, was a well-known caterer, who lived a simple life in the comfort of Yen Town. Her outgoing and cheerful personality was a plus to her business, as it not only brought many acquaintances but also more catering works to cook and serve at big occasions and prestigious ceremonies. Initially, Madam Tasty did not start as a big caterer. She started very small as a petty roadside food vendor. She hawked food on a wheelbarrow, sometimes under the scorching sun. Some days she beckoned customers to buy her food. "Ogre, come buy my food, sweet well oh," she would call out to passers-by. Some people scorned her. "Your food sweet well, name you never sell finish?" they would say to her. But she did not let their scornful words tame her determination. The more they scorned her, the more persistent she became. Even bad days at sales where she made little gain or no gain at all did not discourage her. Or was it the days that she couldn't sell all her foods and they got spoiled? Madam Tasty did not let her bad days get the better of her. Little by little she struggled and saved up some money which she used to enroll in a catering school. She performed excellently in her culinary school and came out top of the class. Her madam was impressed, and she served her madam for 1 whole year. During the time she served her madam, Madam Tasty garnered some personal customers for herself, and so when she got her own place with the money her madam used to settle her, she did not find it hard to get customers. Years passed, and Madam Tasty's bold step of going to catering school paid off. She became a big name in the cooking game. If there were going to be 20 occasions in Yen Town that needed catering services, Madam Tasty was sure of getting 15 of those contracts, while others would struggle to get hired for the remaining 5 slots of catering services required. That was how Madam Tasty continued to bask in the glory of her cooking progress. A once roadside food vendor was now the owner of a world-class restaurant that made customers smack their lips at the satisfaction of the taste her foods offered. Not only that, she also had a big culinary school that trained professionals with world-class skills. Madam Tasty lived her dream life as more clients called for her services daily, weekly, and monthly, some within the town while other services were offered outside the town. Before she accepted contracts, she didn't spend time to question her customers. Once you had the money to pay, her own focus was to come and deliver. And that turned out to be her biggest woe. One night, while Madam Tasty scrolled through her messages to check for new cooking contracts, she stumbled on a message that read, "I need a cook for my friends and I. All expense paid trip, and do not worry about the money, any amount you say, we will pay." With a number attached to the message, indicating that whenever she was available she should call the number. At first, Madam Tasty did not want to go because the location mentioned was in another state very far away from Yen Town, so she ignored the message. But after 2 weeks, she stumbled on the message, and this time, as if something pushed her, she dialed the number in the message. "Hello, this is Madam Tasty on the line," she said to the man over the phone. "Oh, Madam Tasty, you called at last," the masculine voice said. "I've been expecting your call. Anyways, let me go straight to the point. My friends and I want to have a mini home party and we would like you to come cook for us. Any amount you want we will pay," the voice added. Madam Tasty, thinking of trying out a new state to offer her services and grow her business, requested that she should be paid 5 million for the 5 days she would be cooking for them. The man immediately agreed to pay Madam Tasty the amount without haggling the price. Madam Tasty smiled as she hung up the phone, because in her mind, she thought that she had hit a jackpot. A customer who would make her account grow fatter by paying her some cool millions. During this time, Madam Tasty just had some fresh graduands from her culinary school looking forward to serving with her for 1 year. One of the graduands was Finny, a 20-year-old girl, who looked forward to having a great cooking business and making cool money just like her madam. In fact, Finny was the top student that showed great cooking skills just like Madam Tasty, and Madam Tasty liked her. Finny was Madam Tasty's favorite girl. She took her along for many of her cooking services. She was like her handbag. Some of Madam Tasty's girls were even jealous of Finny because of how Madam Tasty chose Finny over them. So, when Madam Tasty got this enormous cooking contract, the first person that came to her mind to tag along was Finny. The next day when Madam Tasty got to the restaurant, she immediately told Finny about the trip they would both be embarking on in the next 2 days. On hearing the news, Finny was very happy to be chosen by her madam to accompany her on the trip. When she got home that night, She quickly informed her parents about the journey she would be embarking on with her madam. "Mummy, Daddy," she called their attention. "I will be going with my madam for a catering work outside the state," she informed her parents. Finley's parents weren't very comfortable with the idea of allowing their daughter to go to a faraway state, but they had to let her go since she told them she would be going together with her madam, Madam Tasty. 2 days passed and Madam Tasty and Finley, her favorite girl, set out on the journey. The journey was smooth and after about 4 hours on transit they arrived at their destination. As they got to the state, excited and full of energy to deliver her best cooking skills, Madam Tasty took her phone and dialed the number of the man she had been talking to on phone. At first, the man didn't pick up her call. Madam Tasty became restless after waiting for about 30 minutes with no calls coming from the man she had been talking with. She was thinking she had made the wrong decision of agreeing to come this far without knowing the location of her client, when a call came in. The call that came in was from her unknown client and she picked up the call and that was when he told her to describe where she was so that he could send his driver to pick her up. Unsuspecting, Madam Tasty made some inquiry from a passerby and told the man where she was. Within a few minutes, a black SUV packed in front of Madam Tasty and Finley. A tall black man came out of the car urging them to get in the car, that the man whom Madam Tasty had been talking with on the phone sent him to pick them up. Without wasting time Madam Tasty and Finley entered the car, but, immediately they entered the car, they both lost consciousness. Madam Tasty and Finley only regained consciousness after they arrived at an unknown destination, a big house with a large kitchen. Everything Madam Tasty needed to cook was arranged in the kitchen. She didn't have to come with her own equipment. Fear crept in on Madam Tasty. "What have I gotten myself into?" she said to herself. As for Finley, she was visibly shaking out of fear. They didn't know where they were and it was obvious to them that they had been kidnapped. After a while, 2 huge black men came in and grabbed the 2 women. They took Madam Tasty and Finley to another room. All this while, Madam Tasty and Finley were blindfolded in order to prevent them from seeing their faces. "So, you are the renowned chef from Yentown?" A cold voice spoke. "I need you to cook for me and my friends to eat. If you do that without causing me problems you'll go home alive. But, if you cause any problems for me I'll kill you," the voice said. The voice was that of the man that spoke with Madam Tasty on the phone. On hearing the words of the man, Madam Tasty and Finley hearts skipped and they couldn't hide their fear. They didn't know why the people had to blindfold them if all they wanted them to do was to cook for them. While they stood shaking in fear, the man ordered his men to take them to where they were going to choose the meat that they would use to cook for them. Madam Tasty thought that it was real meat, but was met with the most shock of her life when her blindfold was removed. The meat the man referred to were humans. Girls, each waiting for their turn to be slaughtered and served as meat for the men to eat. Madam Tasty was very scared and refused to choose anyone to be slaughtered, but the men threatened her that if she refused to choose any of the girls they would kill her and her girl Finley. The girls lined up to be meat started begging her not to choose them. Every girl pleaded for mercy. But Madam didn't want Finley or herself to die. So she betrayed her conscience. Madam Tasty didn't know what to do, so she closed her eyes and pointed at 3 unlucky girls as they instructed her. Immediately she pointed at a girl. The men who were wearing masks to cover their faces would take the girl and slaughter her. After slaughtering the girls, Madam Tasty was asked to cook pepper soup with the human meat. Left with no other option, Madam Tasty prepared pepper soup with the human meat. Madam Tasty never tasted the food while cooking, so after she finished cooking, the men asked her and Finley to taste the pepper soup and eat the meat. Madam Tasty cried and pleaded that she couldn't eat the meat, that it was against her tradition to eat human meat, but they forced her to eat or they would kill her, and Madam Tasty buried her humanity and ate the meat just to stay alive. But that wasn't the case for Finley. Finley refused to eat the meat, and all Madam Tasty's pleas for her to eat the meat so that they would spare her life fell on deaf ears. Finley was adamant and refused to eat the meat. So right in front of Madam Tasty, they killed Finley and made Madam Tasty cook the girl. At this point, Madam Tasty, who had lost a little of her conscience, cooked Finley just to stay alive. As soon as she finished cooking, the men forced her to eat Finley's meat. Madam Tasty, still wanting to stay alive, agreed to eat the meat. The men laughed as she ate the human meat and instantly transferred 30 million naira to Madam Tasty as payment for her catering services. And immediately, They blindfolded her again and took her out of the unknown place and dropped her off at the place they had picked her up. Outweighed by the weight of what she had done, Madam Tasty transferred the whole 30 million naira into Finley's account. But what Madam Tasty didn't know was that, while she was alive, Finley shared the same account with her mother, so when Madam Tasty transferred such a huge amount of money into the account without them seeing their daughter, Finley's parents started calling Madam Tasty to find out why their daughter hadn't returned home after 2 weeks, but Madam Tasty didn't pick up, unable to face her foes. It was only after 2 months that Madam Tasty mustered courage to text Finley's parents telling them what had happened to their daughter. However, Finley's parents did not believe Madam Tasty, instead they accused her of being a ritualist. They couldn't believe the story she told them. Why would their daughter die and she would return alive? They believed Madam Tasty had used their daughter for ritual and so they sought to arrest her, but didn't know her whereabouts. Finley's parents filed a case against Madam Tasty, but nobody knew where she was. Even the police could not find her. What Finley's parents didn't know was that upon her return from the horrible journey, Madam Tasty never returned to her exotic restaurant. She completely abandoned her dream, fame and the reputation she had built, and nobody ever saw her again. Before you go for an outside duty as a caterer, try to know your customer and know the kind of food you'll be asked to prepare to avoid meeting the same fate as Madam Tasty. And do not be like Madam Tasty, who travels to an unknown place without thinking twice because of the huge amount the customers were willing to pay. Thank you for watching and listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed the story. Like, comment and subscribe for more amazing stories.